I'm Teresa Norton, and this is The View from a Broad. And I'm the broad, and this is the podcast where, we look at how the world has changed and if we've changed with it. And we do that by unpacking a newspaper column that I wrote almost 30 years ago when I was living and working and raising a family in Hong Kong. And every week I have a guest, and this week my guest is Andrew Bull, who began a career spinning records as a radio DJ at RTHK in Hong Kong, and then became the house DJ at Disco Disco and a number of other very happening spots in Hong Kong. And in 1985, he co-founded what became legendary Canton Disco. And Kylie Minogue performed there, Eartha Kitt, they had Swing Out Sister, Run DMC performed, and actually Sylvester Stallone held his Rambo 3 premiere after party at Canton Disco. So he's still spinning as a DJ. El Toro is his handle, and it's no wonder with the number of high-octane evenings I'm sure he's viewed from the DJ booth, he chose this column written in 1995. La Cuckoo Crotchah. I don't know, maybe I'm nuts, but it seems to me that the major difference between men and women can be found in the bottom of a bottle of tequila. Last weekend, I went to the movies with some friends. They had not been to that new Mexican restaurant, El Placebo de la Placenta, the one. So we decided to have a quiet supper there after the film. How wrong we were. It was Saturday night in Margaritaville, and the mariachi band was cooking. We abandoned any attempt to discuss the film over the pulsating beat of the rumba and the cha-cha as our attention was drawn to the dance floor. A fellow in horn-rimmed glasses and full yuppie gear was entertaining two young women, and as the three of them began to shake their respective groove things, the look on his face was of utter bliss. "This could be the night of my life," it said. "I got two gorgeous babes, I'm drinking tequila, and I'm dancing up a storm. I am the Duke of Earl." The women, one long and leggy, the other cute and curvy, were having a ton of fun dancing with this rather square-looking young guy. And then acid rain began to sprinkle down on this watercolor picture in the form of more tequila. The first sign of trouble was when, in the course of a carefully executed spin, Long and Leggy fell over one of the tables surrounding the dance floor. Fortunately, it was empty, and Hornrim and Curly managed to get her back on her feet without missing more than a couple of beats. By now, they had the undivided attention of the entire restaurant. An older couple wiggled their way onto the dance floor to join them. Hornrim became fascinated with Marge, and in a limbo-like move got down on his knees in front of her. The room tensed as our young hero threw his arms around the older lady's thighs in a display of unbridled affection. She fell backwards and, in a sort of domino effect, landed the five of them flat on their backs. Our lad, now blinded by too much tequila and lack of horn rims, caused by his latest dance move, continued doing what nature intended young men on high-octane fuel to do. His pelvic region came alive. It was as if he had a magnet attached to his Dunhill belt buckle, which drew him alternatively hips to the dancing females or the ceiling, depending on whether he was standing or lying down. In the course of about 40 minutes, we watched our twistin' trio go from spinning and pirouetting to crashing and burning when Long and Leggy's mini-skirt rose to the occasion, so to speak. Tomorrow she's going to wake up and feel this unbelievable hangover and call her girlfriend to ask if she thinks anybody actually noticed her tiger-striped underwear, my girlfriend predicted. Poor baby. She's going to feel like such a sleaze, she added. He's going to pass out in about 5.5 minutes and miss out on the chance of a lifetime, my friend's husband observed wistfully as he watched our lad perform his limbo in front of the bandstand while the two girls danced with each other. That's the big difference between males and females, the regrets we have after a night on the town. She wakes up saying, I must have looked like such a tart. He, on the other hand, bangs his throbbing head against the wall and cries, I could have got laid. I could have got laid. We had all been on the other side of those goofy, gurgling faces, so as they carried the now Duke of Puke from the alcove where he'd passed out, and the girls lurched for the door after him, we could not condemn, only smile knowingly and thank the gods that tonight we'd passed on the tequila shooters instead of passing out on them. Well, hello, Andrew Bull.
Hey, Teresa. Been a while. Been a minute.
It's about 20 years for you and I guess, right?
Well, that's probably a nice sort of generic description, but it's probably even longer. Canton Disco opened in 1985, which was 40 years ago this March.
Wow. Yeah, it was just a couple years after I arrived in Hong Kong. And I was at that opening.
You were?
Yeah, I was at the opening because I was doing a radio show for commercial radio on Saturdays. And in fact, I have to tell you this, because I was a DJ on the radio, I got that album, that mix album with the beautiful artwork on the outside that was the Canton 33 RPM album. I go to the M Plus Museum, and that album cover is in the museum.
All my stuff is in the museum. I'm the only nightclub that's on permanent display in the design gallery because I happen to commission the greatest designer from Hong Kong, apart from Henry Steiner, of course. But yeah, Alan Chan did all of our designs, and he's heavily featured in the design gallery. So you can see my checked signature and any kind of ramblings that I came up with, and albums, coasters, swizzle sticks, you name it.
I kept a piece of the stationery for the longest time because it was printed on that sort of waxy paper.
Yes, we used all the most expensive ways of doing something because we could, So I had my business card was full color on both sides, hot stamping, and some kind of see-through card that you correctly identified.
Yeah.
Wow. I still have a box of 200 Canton Disco business cards. I'll have to give you one with both hands at the end of this. Oh. But it's great that you saw the museum. We're very proud of that.
Yeah, I bet you are. I mean, that's quite a testament to, yes, the beautiful artwork, but also that was just such an extraordinary opening event. I mean, yeah. Everybody was there. I remember it.
I'm so glad you were there. Usually people interviewing me, I'm having to describe it, and it's always, as we say in Chinese, gai tong ap gong. But in talking to you, there's no guy and there's no up, so we're good.
No, I was there. It was unbelievable. Yeah. So, it was a mob scene. It was a billion people.
11,000. Because we sent out 5,000 invitations. Did you see those goggles?
Yes, I had those goggles.
The 3D viewfinder things that were all the craze when we were kids. So anyway, we sent 5,000 of those, and they were with a +1. So technically, we invited 10,000 people. And then with press, media, and everybody else and his dog trying to get in, it was that scene. I have no idea how it wasn't some kind of disaster, but it was a fantastic night.
Yeah, I mean,
it was very irresponsible.
Yeah, it was, but young and irresponsible. Well, that's kind of what that column was about. This was something that I said, something that I felt or I thought was funny at the time, and how do I feel 30 years later? And sometimes for me, I feel the same, and sometimes I feel differently. Very soon after I wrote that column, I started to feel slightly differently about it because I have to tell you what happened afterwards. I was walking around the Happy Valley racetrack with my girlfriends, but I was walking, there was a new girl in our group, and she said to me, she said, you're Teresa Norton, the one who writes the column? And I said, yeah. And she said, you know that one you wrote about the girls and the guy getting drunk in the Mexican restaurant? I said, yeah. She said, that was my friend, was one of those girls. And I said, oh, well, I didn't mention any names. But, I started to get this slightly feeling about, imagine being that girl.
Yeah.
And reading that story, So I had a little bit of writer's remorse then. But then the story goes on, and the yuppie guy that was with them, she said that the three of them left, and he fell all the way down the escalator, and they had to call an ambulance. They didn't even know who this fellow was. So that's, sort of one of the things that I feel some remorse about that. Well, usually the joke was on me, and that time I think, they were sort of the brunt of the joke. Now, what about, this assumption that girls feel like, oh no, I must have looked like a slut, and boys feel like, damn it, I missed out on a chance to. That I think is pretty out of date today in terms of the way we look at male and female relationships. What do you think?
Depends who you know, but it should be out of date. My God, I run a nightclub in 2025, so this is a nuanced subject, calibrated every Friday night, recalibrated every other Friday night. So, I mean, people being irresponsible and losing their minds is still a thing.
One of the things that I'm noticing is that younger people aren't drinking so much.
Yeah, it's a bit like Absolutely Fabulous was a good prediction, because the younger people are more responsible than the older people these days.
I remember I had a Christmas do at my house, and a bunch of my son's friends were there, and my friends, and my brother was there. And I had made a big, those wonderful old Chinese thermoses. In fact, I think I got it at Goods of Desire. It was one of those old school ones, right? And I filled it up with sort of a Christmas blend of just tea. And then, of course, there was wine and beer and other stuff. And none of the young people were drinking anything but the tea. My brother said, what's happened to young people? They're all drinking tea.
Yeah. Well, the sales of alcohol have gone down, particularly in the United States.
In Portugal, there's a Portuguese brand of zero alcohol gin that is very good. And in fact, I've got a bottle of it myself called Foxtail. And it says on the bottle, it says Foxtail dry fire. And then it says in quotation marks, trouble free.
Hey.
Well, listen, let's take a little break here, because I want to hear about some of the things that you're doing now. And when we get back, we can do a little reminiscing in terms of true stories. Can you tell me, Andrew, about Shine Communication Shanghai? Because this has nothing to do with El Toro, does it?
Basically, you have to dial it back to, I mean, I've been a DJ in my mind since I've been about 8 years old. And the first photograph of me DJing was taken when I was 12. And I'm basically, anytime I veer from that calling, it's just degrees of weird until I come back to doing what I am actually supposed to be doing. But I found out from being a concert promoter and being in a relatively high-profile space in Hong Kong in terms of show business and events, I was getting asked by real brands and real agencies to help them to put stuff together, particularly in mainland China, where I pioneered doing live concerts with Paul Simon and various other people, Ruichi Sakamoto and things like that. I was quite an early adopter of the concert promotion business in the mainland. So I was asked originally by Heineken Beer to start doing what they call in-bar parties. So basically you go to a pub or a club and then you create a theme like Ibiza night, for example, and then you bring dancers and equipment and lasers and you do a branded night in a club as a trade marketing exercise. So I started doing that from my office in Hong Kong in the 90s, all across China, and it gave me great experience. But when SARS hit Hong Kong, which it actually was harder on Hong Kong than the most of the mainland, there was quarantine and stuff. This was way pre-COVID. This was SARS. This was 2002. So, yeah, I was busy up and downing as usual into China, and but then Hong Kong really slowed down during SARS, and so around 2002, I was lurking around in Shanghai for longer than I normally would. I actually ran into a guy called Jeff Huang, who I was introduced to, who's a guy who just started his own company, trying to do what we do, but without having the experience of actual on-road activation like me and my team. So we got together and tried a couple of test projects, and we realized that we could be a perfect fit. So we started a company there, Shine Communications Shanghai, me and Jeff, and we're still going 25 years later.
I'll usually ask people during these little sort of infomercial breaks, how would people get a hold of you if this was something they wanted to hire you for? But I don't even know, do you have any time for that? Because I saw that you are also launching your El Toro World Tour. So...
Well, that's never stopped. That's been going on since I was 8.
Oh, I see.
Well, no. I mean...
How would people get a hold of you, Andrew?
Oh, just send me an email, bull@shine-ads.com.
So, what are some memories that you have of Hong Kong in the 80s? I told you I arrived in 83. You were there before me because you came as a kid. What are some things that stood out to you?
Well, Hong Kong was absolutely amazing in the 70s, before AIDS was either known or was a thing. And so people's reason to go to nightclubs was to hook up in one way or another, either socially or in other ways. I mean, basically, it was the social networking that society provided for people who needed to communicate with other people at certain stages in their life. So going to a club was basically you'd look your best and smell your best and get your butt out there. Yeah, pretty much. So it was a lot of hookup culture. It doesn't sound very nice, but people would go to bars to see who's who and see what's what. And so that was no exception in Tsim Sha Tsui. And of course, after 1980, when AIDS was starting to have a deadly effect around the world, and even especially in Hong Kong, so that the 80s was tainted a little bit by the fact that the good times were somehow rolling, but there was this background of death and destruction.
Yeah.
Where there was actual, we were constantly going to AIDS benefits. We all knew somebody who'd recently passed away and all that kind of thing. So the 80s was a downer to start off with from that point of view. But Hong Kong's got a short memory. We got around to it. By 1985, I had left Disco Disco, which was the club I played at in Lan Kwai Fong with Gordon Huthart's place. There's an amazing story about Disco Disco I should share with you.
Please.
There's a Broadway musical on in New York at the moment called Hong Kong After Midnight, and it's predicated upon the life story of Gordon Huthart, and there's an Indian guy playing me, so you need to go and see it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's
So,
unbelievable. I used to
yeah,
go there with some of my gay friends because that was one of the, the other thing to keep in mind is that period when I was there. Of course, I was working in theater, and a lot of friends of mine who were gay, and
yeah,
it was against the law.
yeah, for
Buggery was a
sure.
crime.
Yeah.
So,
I was there. Well, I
it,
mean, but that's how the musical came up, because Gordon Huthart, when he was younger, before he opened Disco, he used to come to the scene where our legendary manager, a Scottish guy called Dave Gilhooly, part of his job description was to stop men dancing together because it was frowned upon by both the hotel and the other guests. So Gordon used to come to the scene and deliberately get thrown out for dancing with his boyfriend. So I
wow.
happened to mention this. I think it was Anne Marie Evans on Radio Hong Kong. I happened to mention this story, but anyway, some kids at a musical theater college in New York seized on that and built a musical around it, which is currently off Broadway somewhere in New York.
And it's called Hong Kong After Midnight?
Yeah.
Oh, that's something that will definitely be Googled as soon as you and I get off this podcast.
That's a great disco story.
That's a great story. I can also remembering in '83 when I arrived, there was no Lang Kwai Fong. There
Yeah.
was a place called Vini Salumi that
Yep.
had an Italian delicatessen, and then they had an outdoor sitting area with little benches where you could sit and get a teeny bottle of wine and a little
World's best
lasagna.
meatball subs.
Yeah, they had great food.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then what opened up next, as I recall, was Camargue. Do you remember Camargue?
Yes,
Was at
yes,
the far
Camargue
end, at the
on the
bottom
corner, yeah.
of Lang Kwai Fong, and it was a club because they didn't have a liquor license, so they had to
Yeah, it was a
do
members
that
club
thing.
thing. And then right next to Camargue, which used to be the meat packing room for the Colorado Meat Company, I rented that and turned it into Music Boutique Boule, which was a fairly pretentious gift shop and record shop, which lasted for four years or so down there at number 3 Lang Kwai Fong. And I've still got letters from my mum to Andrew Boule, number 3 Lang Kwai Fong, which is now 7-Eleven.
Wow. Well, also I remember 97 opened up.
Yeah, sure, because Gordon at Disco was trying to, I think that he was approached by Christian Romberg and the Austrian guys who opened 1997. And they were going to do some collaboration, but I think Gordon was not that collaborative, and it didn't really, nothing emerged, but he agreed to open the back door of Disco, which faced directly onto 97. So we had this thing called the underground door, which was at the back. So then people from 97, so you'd get like bankers and what today we would call JP Morgan types falling out of 1997. And then they would join the rest of us in Disco at certain times of night by the back door. So that's how Lang Kwai Fong became like, because we initially, when we were the only place in Lang Kwai Fong, we didn't want anyone else to open. But then we realized the more people who opened, the more disco victims there were to choose from on Lang Kwai Fong.
Well, I can tell you something. I was in a series of musical reviews with a company called the Actors Rep because I was working as an actor, and they were called the Oids. There was Schizoid and Bastoid, Son of Schizoid and Paranoid. And in Paranoid, we had a number that went a little something like this. If ever you find you're in Lan Kwai Fong, where it's all cuisine nouveau, all you will get is bored and stony broke there. Grab your coat and chapeau.
Oh, fantastic.
And the waitress was a snooty cow. So it was all based on the Mozart thing, but it was a whole send-up of the Hooray Henrys and Ya Okay and Ya crowd.
You must send me the lyrics to that. I must have a a QR code to their lyrics to that on my homepage.
That was Barry Backer. Barry Backer wrote the lyrics to that, and Peter Lally wrote the music. Well, Mozart wrote the music, but he arranged it, and it was very cute because we did that, and it was a whole. We were in our powdered wigs and doing it a la Mozart in the review.
Yeah.
And Dick Kaufman, who was running California, which was where the hamburger that cost too much money was the center of this song. He brought burgers to the whole cast after the show. Good old Dick Kaufman. So
yeah. May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. In fact, I interviewed Divine in California when you brought Divine out to open Canton.
My God, you're a gold mine. I need you for my book. I need to interview you. People have much better Andrew Bull stories than me. I love this one for sure. So I remember
we brought Divine like.
Well, his name is Glenn. His name was Glenn Milstead. He was a very ordinary, fat American fellow. But when he got the gear on, he was divine. We just wanted to do something outrageous for the opening, and I happened to know some South African guy who was his manager. So I said, "Could we do this?" And I've still got the audio of the commercial that Morton
from Stung.
Yeah, he did. He created this jingle for the grand opening of Canton Disco for broadcast on commercial radio English channel.
Another thing I'm thinking about was, and this was like the thrill of all thrills, was seeing Eartha Kitt at Canton.
Oh my God, yeah. That was amazing for me because fast forward to now, I run the nightclub at I host a party on Friday nights at the Mandarin Oriental, Hong Kong, for the last year and a half. Me, Marina Boulevard, Cosmo Weber, and my wife Sally, we have a team which operates this incredible cosmopolitan nightclub on Friday nights. And that takes place on the 25th floor of the Mandarin Hotel. So I've come full circle in that the first time I ever went to the 25th floor of the Mandarin Hotel was to interview when I was a cub reporter on Radio Hong Kong doing entertainment stories. I went to interview Eartha Kitt, who was doing a residency at the Harbour Room, it was called. It was like a sort of a Vegas-y showroom supper club they used to have. And people would come and do residencies. And that's the first time I met Eartha Kitt there.
How old were you, Andrew? How old would you have been?
17.
Did you even know who Eartha Kitt was? Did you know the legend you were talking to?
I was conscious by doing my research that here was a person. We didn't have Google in those days, but I certainly asked Uncle Ray if I could go and get some Eartha Kitt records out of the library to get bone up on my subject matter. So, so I met her.
She had that extraordinary way of talking. She was just like a pussycat.
She never slept. When I brought her to Hong Kong to perform at Canton Disco, she had two managers. They worked 12 hours each. So so one guy was awake for 12 hours and the other guy was awake for 12 hours just in case she wasn't asleep. And there's a couple of great photos of my wife Sally taking her for lunch on the Jumbo restaurant for dim sum. But when you work with people like that's what gave me confidence to stick to it as a promoter. When you work with somebody like Eartha Kitt, that's legendary stuff.
Yeah.
And I had the same experience when I used to, every couple of years, I used to bring Sir Peter Ustinov to do his one-man show at the Lyric Theatre. I mean, talk about thespian legends, baby.
I saw him do that show
Did
with
you come
the
see the show?
piano. Yeah.
So I brought him 3 or 4 times because he loved the Mandarin Hotel because in the Clipper Lounge, there used to be a big statue, which was actually the front of a clipper ship, which is why it's called the Clipper Lounge. It's been disappeared in the recent renovations, but it was actually from the prow of a ship that he was in a movie called Billy Budd, and so every time he came to the Mandarin, you have a photo next to one of his most famous movies. Dude.
I am going to hit you with one more last, because if I go back to that column and I say any regrets about that column, I would say the regret for me is that it was kind of poking fun at somebody else's mishap, so that's not really the kind of humor that most of my columns were about, but that was that one. So that would be not a huge regret, but something that I would have done differently today. If you look back over your life and you say, if I could put my finger on something that I would do differently today as a man of 69 that I did back in the day, is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Well, I mean, you have to be careful that, as I say, when people in the nightclub business see what we see, and we see who we see. So you have to be. It's a little bit like being a priest who receives confession. You don't go around say, "Well, guy, you've no idea what I just came into my booth." so you have to realize that people are in that stage of they're losing their minds for whatever reason, and humans have the capacity to do that and recover. And I think you can be there's nothing worse than actually hurting somebody by being flippant, and I'm sure I do it all the time, because I was just like, what was so that's the one thing that I don't like people telling me I did. So, do you realize you ruined my life for about 6 years by saying that in front of so and so? So I mean, I tend to get swept up in the moment myself, and I was like, but honestly, I counsel against being indiscreet with the public, basically, because people come to you as a sort of
safe space.
It's a safe space. And if you poke that wrongly, you're in the wrong. Yeah, I'm the world's oldest criminal in that department, I'm sure.
Well,
because I tend to have no filter when I'm in the mood.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's really a lovely way for us to wrap this up, because it brings us back to the beginning, to that column, and also, that's what the whole program is about, is looking at what's the point in getting older if you're not getting wiser?
Whoa.
And
wise words. Yeah.
Wise words. There you go.
Yeah.
Not original words.
No.
But true.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm going to wrap this up by saying thank you to you so much, Andrew, for taking the time to talk to me. It took us a little while to get it organized, and it's been a pleasure, a wonderful trip down memory lane with you.
Well, it's a very, very warm afternoon in Hong Kong, 34 degrees. You know the drill.
I know.
It's been but I usually, Monday is usually my sort of Sunday. I can see there's a lot of WhatsApp messages, but they'll wait till later.
I heard them pinging in the background.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I enjoyed this time with you, and I just want to say, if you're going through anything, or if you're regretting anything today, breathe all the time. Come up slowly. Don't beat yourself up too much. We're only human, and hey, whatever happens tomorrow, what if it's good? So let me say this. If you enjoy the podcast, please do share with your friends, comment, and keep coming back. We'll see you next time.